Will you pray with me? Present God, help us roll stones away to open up possibility and hope. Amen. Look, I am terrible at trivia. Like, absolutely terrible. There are only 3 trivia questions that I really have any kind of prayer of answering. One of them's a little subjective. Number 1, on what day was J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit published? September 21st, 1937. Easy. Number 2, what's the greatest TV show in the history of network television? Only one obvious answer, MacGyver. Number 3, what is the shortest verse of the Bible? Jesus wept. Well, that last one saved me in Sunday school. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, we had a Bible quiz one Sunday morning, and Mrs. Thompson, the Sunday school teacher, asked this very quiz question. She called on me when I raised my hand, and then I dramatically marched up to the front of the classroom, wiped my brow with a particular flourish, as I imagined a televangelist would, and I declared the shortest verse in the Bible is John 11:35. Jesus wept. I think I took a slight bow after saying that and walked back to my seat in a fit of giggles. Mrs. Thompson rolled her eyes and muttered something like, "He's weeping right now, that's for sure." It's funny how I understand this verse differently now. I may have taken it lightly back then, but today I recognize how this short verse reveals a vulnerable man impacted by a devastating experience. Jesus wept. Jesus loses a friend. Grief overwhelms him. His potential for great empathy is on display for everyone to see. The comforter needed comfort. The healer was undone by grief. Jesus wept. And that moment, it opens a door to this twist in the story. We are told that Jesus holds the divine power to bring someone from death back to life. He holds unfathomable authority. So, why does he have to ask for help to roll the stone away from the tomb? Jesus has the strength to bring a friend back from the finality of death, but has to ask for help to move a stone? Moving stones that feel too big to roll on our own? I mean, that's what grief feels like, right? In the midst of grief, we all know what it feels like to face a stone we can't move. Grief that weighs us down, that guilt whispering, "I should have done more." Fear that clenches the chest, anger at God, at others, at ourselves, silence like this stifling vacuum. And Jesus may also be experiencing a little bit of resentment, frustration with people who expect him to just do something, anything. Remember Martha's words, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Can you imagine someone saying that to you? When facing the loss of a loved one, any of these is unbearable. Under it all, we can lose the strength, the will to just get out of bed in the morning, let alone move some heavy stones. Many, if not all of us, know these struggles or struggles like them. Yet we also know that death is a reality. The story tells us that death was something Jesus himself just couldn't live with. So seriously, how do we? Too often, the heavy stones of silence stand fortified before us when it comes to conversations about death and dying, and yet we commit to following the way of Jesus Christ, who tells us that death does not have the final word. We shy away from conversations about death. We call them morbid. We say, just be grateful you're alive, or God has something great planned for you. Platitudes don't help. Sometimes what we really need is space. Space to name our fear, acknowledge our finitude, to roll the stone of silence away from the tomb's entrance. Sometimes, and I truly believe this, sometimes the first miracle is simply speaking honestly about our need. Just like Jesus. I need you to help me move this stone away. Can we talk? I don't know what happens after death. I don't know if that makes me a bad pastor or a good pastor. If you want an answer to that trivia question, you'll have to look elsewhere. But I do know that our fear and anxiety and sadness about death are the very stones that often stand before the tomb, preventing us from talking about what's inside of it. And sometimes that's the only thing we need, the space to talk about it so that we can enter the tomb and just kind of poke around a little bit. So I don't know what happens after death. I do know what it feels like to be lying in the back of an ambulance, begging a paramedic through rasping breaths to just hold my hand. Because if I died, I did not want to die alone. In the days that followed that ambulance ride in 2005, I just wanted to talk about that. I wanted someone to acknowledge how scary it was. I wanted to talk about mortality because I'd caught this glimpse of the end. I wanted someone to help me roll the stone away. The heavy stones standing between us and conversations about death and dying are built of cultural taboo. They're mortared together with the complexity of anticipatory despair. And yet that longing to be honest about mortality, it's deeply human. It is one of the ways we can find new life together. In fact, a survey by an organization called the Conversation Project found that 90% of people believe it's important to talk about death. It also found that 30% of people actually do. No wonder the weight of our stones feels unmanageable. Sometimes we ourselves are called upon to move the stones. Despite our own panic at the prospect, we thrust a shoulder against the massive boulder and shove it with all of our might. Other times we accidentally knock the stones away, tripping over our own wisdom with spastic serendipity. And on purpose or by accident, we say, "Come and see." This is where the difficult thing lies. It's okay to talk about it. A few years back, I posted a poem on Facebook, the poem that you heard earlier in the service. And a short time later, my dad called to say how deeply he resonated with it. To him, it captured what it feels like to approach the end of life, chasing that final, beautiful sunset. And just listening Just having the opportunity to hear him talk about death with no fear, only respect and reverence, was a gift that I will always have. That moment, his ease in speaking about death felt like someone quietly rolling a stone away. It was a sacred opening. It was a gift. When I was 18 years old and preparing to leave for a year of mission work in the Dominican Republic, I didn't really know what to expect. I'd been there before, but not for that amount of time. I'm not sure what prompted me to do so, but before leaving, I planned my own memorial service so my parents wouldn't have to in the event something happened to me. At that age, I wasn't yet encumbered by the stigma carried by conversations about death, so I sat down with a family friend and we sketched out what the service would include. And I do not remember a lot of that conversation, and the only detail that I remember about the service was that for the postlude, I requested Ode to Joy. More than a decade after finishing my stint in the Dominican Republic, I stood in a cave in Bethany outside of Jerusalem on the other side of the world. The place, in fact, that tradition tells us is the tomb of Lazarus. I was on a pilgrimage through the Holy Land. The pilgrimage group had this little book of Psalms that my dad had set to music. While standing in that tomb of Lazarus, we were asked to turn to Psalm 127. The leader said, "As we pause in this moment, we remember Jesus raised a friend whom he loved." We also note the special nature of this psalm, which was written by Ken for his son Ned on March 22nd, 2006, the day before his 30th birthday. Exactly 20 years ago today, in fact. I had no idea what was coming. Note the context. We sang in a place where death was recognized as both finite reality and infinite mystery. We stood within a crypt, a tomb, where a stone was rolled away. Jesus, who couldn't bear to lose his friend, called from the opening of that very tomb in which we stood, "Lazarus, come out." We sang a song written for the first birthday that followed an accident which almost claimed my life, the accident that landed me in the back of an ambulance begging a paramedic to hold my hand. I was still in a sling at the time of its writing. And as we sang, I realized Psalm 127 was set by my dad to a piece of music that I recognized. Joyful are our homes with children, each one family, each one friend. They are symbols of your kinship, signs of life that have no end. Dun, 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 dun. Ode to Joy. The same piece of music that my teenage self had requested for my future memorial. In that moment, the past kind of folded in on itself, the accident, the fear, the longing to talk about mortality, the silence, the need for help. It felt as if my father were standing there, both literally and metaphorically, calling out, "Ned, come out." And something inside of me just like broke open. It was a resurrection of its own kind. Anyway, I don't know. I think eventually if we manage to gain comfort or perspective about any of this, we'll get to the end of the story about Lazarus and realize it ends in a different way than we expect. Jesus says, loosen his bonds and let him go. Let him go. Those departing words are often the heaviest stones to roll away, but if we prepare ourselves through communication and dialogue, perhaps we'll learn there's no need to be silent after all. What happens when we're willing to open up and talk about death? Well, my guess is life will never be the same. If we dare to speak openly about death, grief, fear, hope, if we roll away stones for one another, then we will also discover what Jesus already knew. Resurrection begins in community. So I invite you back to the tomb, not in despair, but in honesty, in courage, in tenderness. Let us speak openly. Let us hold space for the mystery. Let us meet one another in peace. And this Lent, one more simple gift we can add to the growing list is granting each other the opportunity to talk about the difficult things, no matter what they are. You have no idea what a difference that can make unless you've been the recipient of that gift yourself. And I hope you have. Together, and only together, we will find the strength to move stones. Amen.